The harshest power move is not destruction. It isn't confrontation. It isn't revenge. It is silence. It is withdrawal. It is leaving someone without an ending, without explanation, without closure. Machiavelli understood that people are not most addicted to pleasure or even love. They are addicted to certainty. The mind demands conclusion. It wants to seal events into a neat box. Without that finality, people begin to unravel. They replay moments endlessly. They search for meaning. They cannot move on. That is why refusing closure becomes one of the most damaging psychological tools available. Closure gives peace. Without it, people remain in turmoil, and that unrest makes them permanently sensitive to your presence. Most think they seek happiness. In truth, what they want are answers. To know why something happened, to know their place, to know how a story ends. Consider someone left without explanation. Outwardly, life goes on, but inwardly, their mind stays trapped by the unanswered question, why? That is leverage. If you give closure, you set them free. You untie the knot. They walk away calmer and lighter. If you withhold it, they cannot walk away. You remain in their mind. You control their attention. This is why Machiavelli warned, never explain more than you must. The more you explain, the more you free them. The less you explain, the more unfinished the story feels. A completed story dies. An incomplete one lingers indefinitely. Shakespeare's plays concluded. Machiavelli's principles did not. That is why his influence endures. He spoke in principles, not endings. His writings invite endless interpretation, and therefore they never close. The same applies to people. Never hand them the final page. A loud argument, where you reveal everything and slam the door, lets the other person rest peacefully within a week. But a quiet exit, where they do not know your feelings, your motives, or your return, haunts them. They never sleep soundly again. The unfinished always carries more weight than the finished, because the human mind cannot leave puzzles unsolved. Machiavelli wrote that it is often better to appear less transparent than you are. Leave people guessing, and they begin working on your behalf. If you do not explain yourself, they invent explanations. If you hide your intentions, they imagine scenarios. If you refuse closure, they rewrite the story countless ways. Each imagined version keeps you alive in their thoughts. They cannot escape you. Meanwhile, while they burn energy searching for answers, you move freely, unaffected. You have already moved on, while they remain tied to the absence you created. Notice how often people demand closure in breakups, arguments, betrayals. They say, just be honest, or I just need to understand. What they truly ask is, please free me. They believe answers will heal them. They don't see that closure itself is often only an illusion. A plea for closure is really a plea for release from dependence. If you give it, you lose influence. If you withhold it, you remain the unsolved question they return to. Machiavelli would say, if you want control, never give others the key to their own escape. We live in a culture that praises clear communication, end the things properly, be transparent, offer closure. But consider who does that serve. Closure benefits the other person, not you. It restores their balance, gives them dignity, and allows them to walk away satisfied. Why offer that gift? If someone wronged or underestimated you, silence cuts deeper than words. You don't curse, you don't shout, you don't explain. You leave, and they are left carrying the weight of an unfinished sentence. Every explanation you provide is a rope you hand them. With enough explanation, they climb out of confusion and find peace. Machiavelli's advice: never over-explain. Say less than you know, reveal less than you think. Always leave gaps, because the mind despises gaps. It fills them with imagination, with paranoia, with endless replaying. And imagination always hurts more than reality. Silence turns their own mind into your instrument. Take the lover. If you end things with a long message, they grieve, process, and heal. Months later, they move on. But if you end things wordlessly, leaving questions, they never stop thinking of you. They wonder if you'll return. They wonder what they did wrong. You linger in every relationship after. Take the enemy. If you fight loudly and explain yourself, they know exactly why you cut ties. Closure allows them to hate you with confidence. But if you walk away quietly, they are left replaying the conflict alone. They cannot predict you because they don't know your plan. Take the colleague. If you explain why you disagree, the tension resolves. But if you say nothing, they spend weeks guessing at your opinion. Their uncertainty gives you the upper hand. Fear fades. Threats lose strength. Pain dulls with time. But uncertainty remains. Lack of closure keeps wounds fresh, because the mind doesn't know how to close them. The thought resurfaces again and again. This is why Machiavelli taught that closure is mercy, and mercy reduces power. By denying closure, you deny peace. Without peace, they remain tied to you. So the deeper lesson is this: if you want influence, don't give people peace. If you want control, don't provide the ending they seek. Silence, absence, mystery. These are your strongest weapons. Not because they destroy others, but because they leave others destroying themselves in your name. When their own mind becomes your guard, you have mastered one of the most powerful rules of psychological leverage. A clear ending sets people free. An unfinished story keeps them in prison. Closure lets people rebuild. But leaving things unfinished keeps them circling, questioning, and obsessing. That is the essence of Machiavelli's principle of psychological leverage. You don't harm someone by attacking them. You harm them by never finishing the sentence, by leaving their mind running in silence, always behind, trying to catch up to a version of you that no longer exists. Because once you deny closure, they handle the rest themselves. They start inventing reasons, blaming themselves or you, rewriting the past, trying to make sense of it, seeking revenge or reaching out, only to spiral back into dependence. And you, having already walked away, don't need to act further. The leverage is already yours. Here's the key. With no closure, you create imbalance. You walk away complete. They walk away unfinished. That open loop dominates their subconscious. Even if they pretend otherwise, they may laugh, post, talk, or claim they've moved on. But it's performance, because the real story never closed. The dynamic shifts. You've processed it. They are still processing you. You're quiet, while they're trapped in endless monologues. You've closed the book. They're still on the same page. This imbalance is not cruelty, it's position. Machiavelli would frame it not as manipulation, but as strategy. You hold power not by directly steering behavior, but by remaining the unresolved question in their mind. As long as they wonder, you hold the advantage. One of the clearest applications of this is what we now call ghosting. But ghosting isn't always immaturity. Used intentionally, it becomes a tool of confusion and control. Here's how it works. You create a strong connection, fast, deep, intense. You mirror their emotions, reflect their needs, bond closely. Then you disappear. No argument, no explanation. Only silence. Now they're left in a vacuum, emotionally heightened, but with nowhere to place it. They overanalyze, blame themselves, feel abandoned. Meanwhile, you're untouchable, everywhere in their thoughts, but nowhere in reality. You become a phantom in their mind. The result: they dream about you, hate you, want to fix things, watch your behavior, build stories of winning you back. All of that energy is spent on you. Positive or negative doesn't matter. Obsession itself is leverage. To apply this tactic with precision, it must be engineered. Step 1. Deliver a peak emotional moment before you withdraw. Give praise, deep connection, or vulnerability. This creates contrast, and contrast strengthens memory. Step 2. Exit at the high point. Most leave during conflict or decline. Instead, vanish when things are at their best. The mind cannot process this, addicted now to a high without conclusion. Step 3, say nothing. Not, I need space. Not, it's not you. Nothing. The less you explain, the more imagination takes over. Silence breeds projection. Step 4, reappear lightly if you choose. A short message, a vague emoji, a subtle like, just enough to stir old ashes so they reignite on their own. You are no hero, no villain. You are the unresolved figure, and unresolved figures live longest in memory. Here's the psychological twist. Those denied closure rarely just suffer. They often return, not for revenge, not even for reconciliation, but to seek resolution. Their mind convinces them, you must go back and end this properly. But there is no proper ending. That's the design. So they return, weakened, no longer negotiating from strength, but from uncertainty. You hold detachment, control, and the narrative. They've been thinking of you. You haven't been thinking of them. That gap is the root of dominance. Machiavelli's method was never cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was about control. Power lies in creating conditions where others respond to you, not the other way around. Withholding closure fits perfectly into this model. By leaving things unfinished, you set the tempo. You force them to internalize you. You remove their independence and place yourself inside their emotional framework. From there, even silence is a command. You don't ask for loyalty, yet they give it. You don't demand attention, yet they focus on you. You don't justify leaving, yet they search for reasons. This is not carelessness, it's deliberate leverage. The kind of influence that can't be bought or faked. It's built on one decision: don't explain, don't close the door. Leave it open and let them wander indefinitely. The human mind cannot accept what it cannot complete. People don't need permission to dislike you, but they do need permission to forget you. And when you deny that permission, when you withhold closure, you become part of their identity. Not just a memory, but a scar, a reference point, and that reference point follows them everywhere. But Machiavelli's deepest skill was not in creating obsession. It was in shaping how that obsession appeared in public. The aim was not only to keep individuals bound, but to turn silence into social presence. That is where psychological leverage turns political. It's no longer about one relationship, it's about shaping the entire room by controlling how absence is perceived. Here's how. When someone lacks closure, they search for it in others. They talk. They speculate. They ask, have you heard from him? Do you know what she meant? Why did they leave like that? Every conversation spreads your name, not because you're there, but because you remain unresolved. This builds social gravity. Your absence becomes a subject. People orbit it. They whisper, guess, and invent explanations. And here's where it turns fully Machiavellian. You didn't demand attention. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't even show up. But now your silence shapes the entire conversation. They're not just gossiping. They're defining you. You've become an image, not a person, and images are harder to erase than people. Scarcity increases value. This is one of the oldest rules in both economics and human behavior. What's rare becomes prized. What's inaccessible becomes desirable. What disappears without warning becomes unforgettable. By removing yourself without closure, you create not just psychological scarcity, but also social scarcity. People say, he doesn't talk to anyone anymore. She just disappeared. They never explain. That absence becomes reputation. Even when people resent it, they respect the control. And even when unspoken, they wonder, what do they know that I don't? Why are they so calm? Why do they never need to explain themselves? That wonder is hidden obedience. It shows you've stepped above the need for approval. While others still chase clarity, you rise above them, not with status, but with emotional independence. And independence is rare. Like rare metals, rare traits always gain value. Here's the paradox Machiavelli would have noticed. The more someone feels confused by you, the more they may defend you in public, just to protect their own identity. They don't know where they stand. They may feel neglected or rejected, but admitting that means admitting they lacked importance, that they lost control, that they're still searching. Instead, they label you mysterious, intelligent, principled. They manage your reputation to preserve their dignity. That's leverage no amount of effort could buy, and you gained it without saying a word. Machiavelli would describe this as legitimacy that cannot be given, only felt. It's built through contradiction. You must be present, yet distant, remembered yet unreachable, respected but unavailable, admired but never fully understood. This balance creates a kind of mirage. People pursue you, defend you, even pledge loyalty, but never reach you. And because you never grant closure, they never stop trying. Their pursuit becomes the cage. You become the warden, and they accept the prison. Because the alternative, indifference, is more painful. This is how confusion transforms into loyalty. They revisit your messages years later. They re-watch your words. They analyze your silences. Over time, they even retell your story to others, not for accuracy, but to validate their own unfinished chapter. Once this loop of confusion, loyalty, and speculation is established, your only responsibility is to avoid breaking it with too much clarity. Never correct the record, never return with explanations. If you reappear, do so without answers. If you speak, avoid justification. If they ask, simply say, some things don't need to be said. Keep your silhouette intact. Step back into full view, and the effect collapses. The power was never in what you explained, it was in what you withheld. Closure ends it, mystery keeps it alive. This is not a tactic for the insecure. In fact, the stronger and more confident the person, the more this principle affects them. Strong people are used to control. They expect understanding. They thrive on certainty and resolution. When you deny them that, when you vanish from their framework, you don't just disrupt them, you confront their ego, and suddenly the strong behave like the weak. They spiral, they reach out, they demand answers, but the rule is simple: never give closure. Let the mind be the cage, let the ego do the work, let silence speak louder than words. Power doesn't come from constant presence, it comes from lasting in absence. When you never give closure, you don't just affect emotion, you shape reality. Every choice they make carries the shadow of what you left unresolved. That gap becomes sacred, untouchable, almost elevated. This is the final stage of Machiavelli's principle. Confusion becomes obsession, and obsession becomes myth. Because when someone can't end the story, they create one. And stories outlive explanations. Every person they meet after compares back to your silence, not because you were flawless, but because you were never fully real. You left before definition. You disappeared before dissection. You stopped speaking before the mystery ended. And now, nothing measures up. The closure they crave becomes the prison they live in. And as they struggle with why they can't move forward, they unknowingly raise your status in their mind. They tell others, "No one made me feel like that. I don't know why, but I still think about them." These aren't compliments, they're proof of submission. Once someone defends your impact without your presence, they're not free thinkers, they're serving the feeling you created through silence. If you had explained, if you had justified, if you had walked them through your reasoning, they would have understood. And understanding breaks fascination. Logic replaces emotion. But silence leaves a cliffhanger. It denies resolution. It gives them the illusion of almost knowing. And almost is more addictive than complete. That is why closure isn't just a mistake, it's self-sabotage. When you remove yourself too cleanly, they can detach. You gave them the tool to forget you. You made yourself easy to process. And Machiavelli would see that as the greatest weakness, to be remembered accurately instead of powerfully. When someone says they ghosted me, what they really mean is, they denied me closure and I still want it. That's the secret. Even anger keeps you alive in their mind. Even resentment is attention. The only thing worse than being hated is being forgotten. Machiavelli called this strategic cruelty. You don't scream, you don't punish, you don't explain, you disappear while they still care. And then they remain locked in the cycle of checking, waiting, replaying, hoping for a sign, an answer, anything. But nothing arrives. The silence itself becomes the loudest message. They hear it daily. Worse, they begin filling it with their own invented stories just to cope. This law is not limited to relationships. It works across politics, business, and social life. A competitor who never hears your strategy grows paranoid. An employee you dismiss without feedback spends months overanalyzing. A friend you cut off without words watches your life from afar, wondering if you remember them. An audience you stop addressing hangs on your next word more desperately, because absence feels heavier than any speech. By refusing closure, you deny people the ability to feel finished with you, and when they can't close the chapter, you remain in control of it. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need universal approval. You only need to remain unresolved, to leave gaps charged with your presence. Gaps no one else can fill, no explanation can replace, no closure can erase. They will keep trying. They will keep failing. And with every attempt, your power grows stronger in their mind.